I'd like to start my presentation by acknowledging that we are meeting on Wadawurrung Country today and pay my respects to ancestors, elders and all community members, including Auntie Deanne who's here with us today. I'd like to further my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and acknowledge that our sovereignty has never been ceded. And I'd also like to acknowledge that what I'm talking about today is something that's very personal to me in a lot of ways, and I'm here sharing my perspectives and my perspectives alone, and not the broader Wadawurrung membership. So the project I'm here talking to today is called the Wadawurrung Possum Skin Cloak Project. And it's a bit of a collaboration with the Gold Rush Collections team here and Federation University for the Ballarat Heritage Festival. So today's session is just a little bit of a taster as to what you can expect for the Heritage Festival. So why focus on possum skin cloaks specifically? For me, when I was doing my undergraduate at Federation University, I was studying history and education. I really wanted to be a history teacher. Not something I ended up going into. The behaviour management was a bit too much for me, to be honest. But my love of history has always remained. And as a young person going through the historical records, reading about some of the amazing interactions that the pastoralists and the miners were having with Wadawurrung people, particularly around the possum skin cloaks, was really fascinating to me. It felt like a piece of my history that I was yet to unlock. And it helped me to understand the relationships between Wadawurrung people and those who are living on Wadawurrung Jar from about the 1830s onwards. But why were these cloaks so important, I wondered, and particularly to Ballarat? Prior to colonisation, Ballarat was a major resource hub for not just Wadawurrung people, but also many other mobs who travelled here. Travelled via song lines, trade routes and travel routes for a variety of different reasons. In fact, Ballarat in and of itself means on one elbow or resting place in Wadawurrung, and I think that gives a really good indication about what people were doing here. They were coming here to rest for a while, for trade, for ceremony, for marriage perhaps, but it spoke to the wealth of resources that were here in this area. Our possum skins were one of our most prized trade commodities, and Ballarat was perfectly positioned with everything that we needed to create them. We had plenty of forests filled with possums that we could hunt. We had swamps with tannin-filled pools that formed a perfect environment to tan the hides. We also had easy access to kangaroos and other animals, from which we harvested sinews and bones, creating the needle and thread that was required to stitch the skins together. And finally, we had plenty of food and water, which we lived off while we waited the weeks to months it would sometimes take to harvest enough possums to tan and then create the cloaks. Possum hides are actually one of the warmest skins in the world. In fact, I've heard many Wadawurrung people tell me that it's the third warmest pelt in the world. There's only two animals that are warmer, the Arctic fox and the polar bear. As you can imagine, as many of you I'm sure are Ballarat locals, you're going to need something pretty warm to keep you nice and toasty during Ballarat's winters. So it comes as no surprise that when pastoralists and miners began to flock to Victoria from the 1830s onwards, they very quickly recognised that their woolen blankets and clothing were not well equipped for the cold and wet seasons of Victoria. They observed Aboriginal people across Victoria with their possum skin cloaks, and it created a real demand. They began to trade with them for these cloaks. There was reportedly a huge demand, and we see references to the cloaks across many paintings, images and newspaper reports, some of which have been up on the screen as I've been talking. There are also many families across Ballarat who have personal stories of cloaks within their families that have been passed down through generations. And that's something that the collections here at the Gold Rush Museum have actually received a few of those cloaks. Over time, as the land was turned upside down and stripped of vegetation by miners, the possums began to vanish from the landscape. The swamps that were so important to the tanning process have been altered and changed. Wadawurrung people were severely impacted by illnesses which spread across the goldfields through contaminated water and poor living conditions. And on the screen you can see some images of the impacts of mining on the landscape around us. We're currently in the process of reawakening many of these cultural processes within the Wadawurrung community. And for many of us, returning the possum skin cloak customs and traditions has been a really important part of this. It's also provided a sense of healing to many of us. It's helped me to reconnect with my ancestors. So I'd encourage you at the end of today to come up and have a look at the beautiful cloak that we have on display here, which is from the Gold Rush collections. We also have some other skins that I'm happy to talk to as well. And we're really excited to welcome you to the Willow Alert session in May as part of the Ballarat Heritage Festival to celebrate these truly beautiful and significant items. So I'd like to finish up by saying Nyatne, Calling Waranal Bagabata, Wadawurrung Ja. Thank you, and we look forward to walking together with you on Wadawurrung Ja or Wadawurrung Country.